Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be continuing our series about trainers and looking at none other than this lovely little plane called the Diamond 40 NG, meaning next generation. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, first things first, when it comes to the Diamond, you got to admit this is a very, very modern plane. You know, just taking a quick little sit here, I mean, look at the seats. It's like, oh man, that might actually be comfortable. We've got this lovely little stick in the middle. I mean, like, so old school. We have just one handle for everything, which is awesome. Notice it's FADEC control. Our fuel system, look at that. This is the word normal. We have a giant takeoff wheel, which is super easy to reach. We've got a little hobs. And look at these seat belts. It's like a car safety belt. Love it. The other thing we have is amazing visibility kind of going in every direction with these little teeny tiny sharklet things kind of chilling out the side there. And of course, when you look at it, you realize this thing was probably designed on a computer given just how aerodynamically almost perfect this thing is. Now, the reason I say all these things, of course, is to kind of prepare you for what we're going to be seeing with it, which I find very interesting. So the Diamond 40, of course, is relatively newcomer as far as aircraft goes. And again, the Cessna 172 first flew back 40s, 50s kind of a thing. This thing is already got the two G1000s. There's another version of this plane that you can get that actually has all the regular instrumentation on it. But like I said, I want to keep it kind of simple today. So how do we get this thing going? Remarkably simple. So what you do is you have these lovely little buttons here. You've got a little essential bus switch. Again, do not know from normal operations. I love that. Avionic master for turning those kind of things off. We have this lovely engine master switch. Notice there's no red handle. We just don't have one because this is a FADEC, meaning a computer actually controls all that stuff for us. So let's go ahead now and get this thing going here. So pop on my lights, turn on my engine master switch. You gotta love how simple that is. We have a little ECU test if we wanted to kind of check that out directly. Our pitot heat's going to be located over on that kind of a side. And again, all of our switches are positioned in such a way that makes it very, very easy to quickly grab onto and actually get our stuff going. We're going to come over to our key now. We're going to click the sucker to the on position right here. Again, everything's going to immediately start firing up. We're getting all sorts of nasty stuff. You can see I'm using the fancy version of the G1000 here that's got all the nice new text on it as well as some functionality. I love how it's got the AHRS line system over here, which is like I said, just get a kick out of. Starting this thing could literally not be simpler. All I'm going to do is I got this little electronic master. I go click. That's it. I don't know. You don't realize how easy that is until you try to fly like a regular airplane. Now, I don't mean to be offensive, but older airplanes, to be more specific here. I'm going to flip on the avionics master switch right there. We've got to press the little soft key. This thing's going to freak out on us, and it's going to be like, no GPS position, no GPS position. And it gets all sorts of grumpy on us and stuff like that. We got a little parking brake. We got our cabin heat. So initial thoughts right away is, first of all, for those of you who are learning to fly, this is definitely a modern aircraft. You have very, very easy to read displays on both sides. You've got all your backup instrumentation in the middle. Switches that are critical are available. All the systems are just literally optimized for simplicity, with one little exception. Now, I noticed earlier that I love the fact that like my little fuel valve, super easy. You just go ahead and click it to the actual fuel valve that you intend to use. But if you actually take a look over here on the right, you'll notice this little switch that says fuel transfer. Now, you're sitting there going, okay, so what's the big deal? I don't care. Well, the big deal is this. We actually have two fuel tanks on this. We got one on one wing, got one on the other. And when you use fuel from the fuel tanks on this particular aircraft, what you're actually doing is sucking all the fuel out of the left wing. So you're sitting there going, oh, I see the problem. Yeah, you're right. So the fuel in this wing needs to be pumped into this wing so that it can then be pumped into the engine in the front. So to facilitate that process, we have a little fuel transfer button located down here, which I am not going to lie, that's actually kind of, I don't like that as far as design goes. And again, it's just our choice. The older Diamonds did not have this feature. This is something that's actually relatively new. Other fun thing with Diamonds, for those of you not familiar with it, the nose wheel does not steer. Notice I'm giving the rudders a pretty good college try here, and this thing does not. You have to actually use differential braking in order to steer on the ground. Now, in the real world, that's no problem. It's actually really, really easy to do. But for us, that's actually kind of hard because I do not have the brakes where I can lock up one brake and not the other one. Again, that would make it much, much, much simpler to do. So already that's kind of a situation. Fortunately for us over in Flight Sim, they've simulated that effect for us. So if I actually tap the brake and give it enough power, I can kind of do one of these things with the brakes. Oh my gosh. I call this the flight instructor shimmy, by the way, if you're curious. Okay, now we're good to go. So that's definitely a ding ding. Oh, come on. So basically you have to give it a lot of power, tap the brake like this. Again, I'm just kind of milking the brake here in order to line ourselves up so we can get on the runway. Taking a look at the windsock. Oh boy, that's not so good. We're definitely going to be favoring runway 21 today. That's okay. By the way, at Simsbury Airport, this is the correct airport this time. I try to keep it consistent. But like I said, unfortunately, I put in the wrong preceding digit. There's a lot of that in the state that I fly, where all the airports have similar numbers here. So now in the normal plane, I can just jam on the rudder. But look at this. I don't turn. So you got to go back to the, like I said, give it a little bit of gas, and you got to do, like I told you, the flight instructor shimmy is what I call it here. This is very, very difficult unless you have differential braking on your flight setup at home, because this is going to make you kind of crazy, even though it's completely realistic to the actual airplane itself. So we're going to go run down here. Obviously, we've got a couple really, really nice systems on board. We'll take advantage of them for us. First of all, I always like to dial in the runway heading. Of course, we've got the altitude. We're going to be cruising at 2,500 today, getting us over. Actually, we'll go up to 3,500 today, just like we did with the other aircraft in order to make it a little bit safer for us. Again, we're going to be dealing with a situation where we're going to be doing our stalls and our, unfortunately, spins once we get to that position. So I'll give this thing a little bit of gas, and we'll kind of bounce down the runway and kind of make our way right up to the end. This is a lovely day in the real world. If you can listen extremely carefully, you'll probably notice the presence of sleet on my window. Unfortunately, that's sometimes what happens, especially where we are. We'll deal with ice a little later, though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zing myself right up to the corner here, as close to the grass as I can. Go ahead and power up the engine again. Again, we're going to go ahead and do the flight instructor shimmy, and we're going to try to go ahead and just milk the brake here in order to rotate this thing. Like I said, as fancy as my setup goes, I do not have differential brakes. My old brakes actually were differential, but what happens is the potentiometer on them goes because of the amount of abuse that you're going to apply on them, which causes them to be absolutely worthless because then they engage when you don't actually want them to engage. Oh yeah, work it. Work it. I love that. All right, we're lined up. We're ready to go. So let's go ahead and give everybody the wiggle waggle. All right, looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Go ahead and full power. Now, again, we're a FADEC engine, so we just give it full power, and it just goes. That's it. There's no, like, sitting here playing with RPMs. There's no trying to set it. Although I noticed the guy who designed this thing, I decided to give me full power as 2305 RPM, which is a no good. Now, the cool thing with this aircraft is the speeds are almost exactly the same as they are on a 172. Whoa! That was a little touchy. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the nose up here. We're going to get to about 78, 79. And we're just going to hold it right there, and that's going to give us a really, really nice climb out here. So again, this plane, that was sprightly. Very sprightly is the term I'm going to use. So right now, it looks like I'm holding, this is my speed, a little bit over VY here, and I'm standing on the tail basically right now. I'm at 15 degrees. For those of you who fly with passengers, 15 degrees is pretty terrifying, so I'll kind of keep it in the back of your head. So we got enough altitude underneath us. We're going to go ahead and back the power up just a teeny tiny bit to about 95%. Now notice my RPM automatically goes down because, like I said, we're a FADEC-controlled engine. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn our way over to the west, and we're going to make our way over to the practice area. So what do I notice right away? First of all, our climb rate is excellent. We're getting about 1,000 feet per minute. Of all the trainers that we've tried so far, we have a real tough time trying to achieve climb rates like that. We're fully loaded, by the way, as far as weight goes. So again, so we're not cheating or anything in that regard. Next thing I notice is we're getting a pretty solid speed of right around 83, 80 knots-ish, which is pretty quick for a climb. Like I said, a 172 is usually about 75, 76 knots. On the bigger planes, usually is right around 100 knots. It's kind of fun because every once in a while you can watch the RPM gauge kind of flash there as we deal with the different kinds of turbulence that are kind of sneaking by. Go ahead and give myself a little bit of trim, just kind of hold the nose in the right spot. And that is lovely right there. All right, so I'm going to go fly over to the practice area, and then we'll give it a good try here. All right, we're almost to the practice area. I've got the engine cruising along at about 85% power. I don't have to play with the mixture or anything like that, which is awesome. Trim-wise, I'm still kind of battling with it, trying to get it to settle down just a little bit here. The nice thing, though, is because we're using the NX version of the G1000, I can look down and see that little green circle, and you can immediately see the trend of the aircraft even before the vertical speed indicator catches up to it. The turbulence, this aircraft does not like the turbulence. But one thing I immediately appreciate, though, is I'm sitting here, I'm at 85% power, and I'm doing 130 indicated, which is tremendously fast for any plane that's this small, and I'm not going to call it underpowered because obviously it's got a good amount of power, but with this amount of power to weight, so to speak. All right, so one of the great things I've also noticed with this one is the G1000 lets me just look down and I can see exactly where I am. All the other aircraft that I flew, I had to do a little bit of old school navigation to kind of find where I'm trying to go safely here. All right, so we've got ourselves over the practice area. Time to go ahead and kind of run it through its different moments here. By the way, there's a really cool dam right there. It's actually, you can't quite make it out, but there'd be a tower, and it's kind of chilling in the water right now. Whoopsies. All right, so let's go ahead and put it through what its paces here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the throttle back. The interesting thing here is notice we keep at 2200 RPM as the propeller changes angle, and now we start slowing down. It's just kind of a weird little quirk here. Our flaps, we're going to have to wait until we get a little bit slower to go ahead and try them out. There's actually a really neat valley right over there with a national park, or I should say a state park that's also worth checking out. Hold that nose up, still slowing down. This thing is very aerodynamic. All right, go ahead and pop down my flaps. We're going to get all nice and dirty. Wow, look at the angle of attack I'm packing here. So we're going to do our first one, which is going to be our approach stall. We're getting slow. Oh my gosh, look at that. Really slow. And there's the stall. Oh, no you don't. That was interesting. That was, kind of like a, I don't know, 7 out of 10? I'm not trying to think of the best way to describe that. It just kind of got slow, and then the nose dropped. Interesting fact about Diamond 40s, I believe, again, I could be wrong on this by the time I go look it up again, was there's never been a Diamond 40 accident due to a stall. Apparently, they're very safe in that regard, although it did want to start departing at me at the last second, but I kind of caught it before it got too engaged. All right, let's go ahead and slow back down again. We'll go ahead and try this sucker out. This time when we do it, we're going to go ahead and do everybody's least favorite, which is the departure stall. So again, we're going to go slow this thing down and pretend we're climbing up, and we're going to go ahead and just give it full power and see what happens this time. All right, nose up. We'll go pop up to about 30 degrees, and it's pretty good right there. And all I have to do is just sort of coordinate my turn here until the thing stops flying. Uh-oh. No, you don't. No. Okay, that's dangerous. Not nearly as sketchy as some of the other ones, and I did fly that coordinated the whole time, so the nose should have just gone, aww, like one of those kind of things, but it did not do that. If I wanted to try that again, I'd do it as a snap stall, and we'll see if I can get it to snap stall here. Don't be surprised if I get myself in a spin here. Slow down, keep my coordination perfect, give it full power, pull back. Okay, that's better. That's what it should look like when it does that. Okay, oh, and now we're falling like a leaf here. Interesting. Okay, so stall's okay. It's definitely better than the small planes, but it's still a little weird compared to the real ones. All right, let's go ahead and try out our steep turn now. And give it a little bit of a tug. Try to keep nice and coordinated during our turn here. It's not bad, but it is very much a heavier planes kind of a steep turn. Like, as you start to take the turn, you can start feeling everything start to get a little more difficult to move. I'm going to go ahead and pull it back. Like, you're always going to be kind of fighting it and looking at my altitude. And I've got it pretty stable right now. Let's go ahead and switch to the other side. A little bit of left foot there as we kind of pop around. Let that nose come down, and we'll go ahead and try it again. Oh, it does not like that. Come on. Oh, okay, so this is definitely not as easy of a steep turn as the other aircraft that we saw here. I'm really having to pull back hard to keep this thing straight. We're not going to stall or anything like that, but it definitely does not like me nearly as much. And I also noticed, did you see how far the nose was up on the horizon? Again, that's just a consequence of having ourselves a 4-engine plane. So interesting, very interesting. So as far as handling goes, it's definitely a little bit more, I don't want to call it mature, but that's almost the word I would use. You have to kind of keep an eye on what you're doing as well as kind of really kind of following everything through. You can't just set it and forget it. The controls are not that light. So let's go ahead and head ourselves back over to our original takeoff point here. Go ahead and take a nice gentle turn. Well, we've done plenty of damage as far as trying to make this thing go up or down. Basically going to pop ourselves right to the east. And now you're going to see one of the great advantages of having all this wonderful technology at our disposal here. So I'm going to go ahead and set the power for about 75%. Again, at 85%, we're getting about 130 knots, which is tremendously fast. So now we have this really cool trick that we can't do in any of the other aircraft we've done so far. Oh, look at that. We can set the automatic pilot. Wow, that's different. So again, that's a wonderful thing to have when you're learning aircraft because, we do this really long cross countries. You kind of need something to kind of take the edge off as far as that goes. So we're going to go ahead and dial this sucker in. We're going to be going over to the airport which we started from. 4B, what? We're going 4 Bravo 9. Enter. We'll go set our CDI appropriately. Boop. We'll go switch this to nav mode and check it out. the aircraft now is going to be taking us right over to our destination, even though previously, like I said, I had to basically identify where we were going, figure out how to get there, figure out the best angle. But these tools down here make it drastically easier to safely navigate this plane, as well as be able to flip this on while I pull out my approach chart or something like that, which is a huge advantage. And from an instrument perspective, one thing I do have to say is this aircraft feels just a little bit rough in turbulence. So I'm very curious to see what happens once we get to our destination and have to land the plane. So what I'm going to do is I'll pause real quick and I'll come get you folks right when we get to approach. Alrighty then, we're crossing over the head of the runway here. We're going to do a quick left downwind for 2-1. Traffic pattern altitude here, as always, is about 1,200 feet. Now, the things we want to watch out for in this aircraft is we are a low-wing aircraft. That means if we're a little fast, the aircraft is not going to want to settle onto the ground. And you'll see exactly what this looks like, I'm sure, because we have an operator. Hey, the Farmington River's looking pretty scummy today. Ugh. So go ahead and pop into our turn here. Go ahead and bring down that first notch of flaps. And again, we just want to kind of get the plane a little tiny bit dirty before we get a little too excessive here. Go ahead and take that nice gentle turn. Again, we're trying to slow down to our approach speed. We have a really nasty crosswind today, which is awesome because that nasty crosswind is going to make it a little bit easier to kind of judge its performance here. Pull that nose up just a little bit. We don't want to get too steep here. It's looking pretty good. As you turn around a point, we'll go ahead and cancel that out. Drop in our next notch of flaps. And now we're just going to begin our descent down to the ground here. Keep it nice and simple. Then I swing to the left a little bit. That looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Here we're looking for the same point that we normally do. I like that 45, kind of that sweet point right there. It looks pretty good. Go ahead and swing ourselves this way. Remember, we're dealing with a heck of a crosswind here. So when we do our approach, we're going to have to be very careful. Now, my experience with diamonds is because the front wheel is a castering front wheel, when you do landings, you have to be very fast with your feet. And that's a little different. It's a little quirky for this particular plane, but it's nothing too bad. There's the end of the runway. We're kind of squaring off here. Kind of swing this way and get ourselves to our final approach speed, which we pretty much got ready to go here. A little high and let the nose come down. Double check my flaps, double check my landing gear. Everything's looking good. Everything's looking good. Getting a little fast, which is really bad with the Diamond because once you build up speed, you cannot get rid of it. So we're lined up at the end of the runway. We're going to go put that right wing down a little bit to compensate for that nasty little crosswind. And I am literally coasting right now, so I'm actually going to skid just a little bit. Cancel out a little bit of that energy. That's a little better, but we're still very fast. And this aircraft is not going to want to settle. Oh, oh, yikes. That was unpleasant. So as you can see, one of the big differences already is the fact that because there's so little drag on this aircraft, your approaches have to be far more perfect than my last approach. Because if you don't do that, you run into that situation where you're either going to float for 20 miles or it's just not going to slow down. So this aircraft, while it's a really solid airplane in that regard, you have to remember. Of course, don't forget our little flight instructor shimmy, which unfortunately just took us into the grass here. Hold that brake. I think I've got a little bit too much power in. Oh my gosh. This is so irritating. No, I'm not even going to. I think you know where I'm going with that one. Oh my gosh. You know what? Ground handling. Whoop. There we go. Cool. So as we taxi back, we'll go ahead and kind of discuss the finer points of this aircraft here. So first things first, what I like, I love the avionics. I think they're very modern. They're very easy to use. They're universal. We have a backup set up at the top here. They're very easy to read. Again, there's nothing too nasty or confusing. We have that mod that gives us the NX version of the G1000, which is great. Things I'm not really a fan of, I should say, is of course that steering is just in the real plane it's much easier because you just tap the brake in that direction, but in this it's just like you really just want to be able to like just go. Like I know that's realistic, I really do, but that like oh my gosh. In the real plane, it's very easy. In this plane, it is just almost not fair for people who have twist joysticks because you're going to be basically punishing yourself, desperately trying to line yourselves up. The fuel system is downright weird, like I was mentioning before. What I did for this particular flight is I actually kept all of the fuel engine on one side, which now means that this particular aircraft, we've burnt, we're down to 12 gallons on that side. We're actually completely out of balance. Now, the neat thing is I can actually press this button right now, and that will turn that on and actually help reset the balance. You can actually watch, if you look really carefully, how the right tank is starting to empty and how the left tank will actually start to come back up as we have to balance it. It would be nice if it did that automatically, but unfortunately for us, it does not, which is a little bit frustrating. Other things that I really, really like about this aircraft is, like I said, we've got that fuel selector, which keeps it simple until you have to push this button in order to rebalance your airplane, which is a little weird, in my opinion. The controller stick being in the middle is easy. The trim is relatively straightforward. Presence of an autopilot is an excellent thing to have. All the important switches are right in front of you. I love the simplicity of just having a single key where you just crank it and go. The FADEC is excellent. It really is a nice modern plane. The stall characteristics were pretty good. It started dropping a wing on us, which I thought was a little weird on both the approach as well as the departure stall. In the steep turn, while it wasn't the hardest steep turn I've ever had to fly, required a lot more concentration than the more lightweight airplanes. But one of the neat things here is our cruise speed was about 125 knots, which is probably the fastest of any trainer we're going to try, and we sit 4 people, so you have a pretty good idea. The one thing we did not measure was just how economical this particular aircraft is, and I can say that it is a very economical aircraft as far as fuel used, especially if you reduce the power. And again, this has all been designed to be very, very simple and very, very efficient. So definitely a really, really solid plane. I like this one probably better than the lightweight trainers, again, because we're a little bit faster. And I know if we were to do some instrument flying on this, the fact that I've got this nice synthetic vision would make it much simpler. But other than that, enjoy.